Okay, in order to get the valve covers off and to inspect the valve clearances or adjust them, you're going to need to accomplish a few things that I'm not really going to go over in this video. Front seat's got to come off, rear seat's got to come off, fuel tank's got to come off. So again, here's like a little checklist more or less, but the meter assembly's got 3 4mm Allen bolts. You got a fuel line and a vent line off the tank. You've got 3 electrical connections between the meter and underneath the tank, and then you have the 10mm pivot bolt that holds the tank down by the rider's seat. 4 plugs and plug boots got to come out. There's a couple breather hoses on the cylinder head, and then when you go to do the case covers, you have to remove the shift rod and the left footrest assembly to get the left or access to the timing plugs on the left side. So with the footrest assembly and the shift rod assembly removed, you can remove the left side engine cover, and then you can take off the caps, the plugs that help you find your timing mark and your end of the crank that lets you turn the engine over. And then you'll move to the right side and take the other cover off to check your alignment dimples or marks, punch marks, which you'll see here in a moment. So regarding validating your at top dead center, this should be obvious, but number one, when one cylinder is at top dead center, the other one is not at top dead center. So it's important to understand that just because you have the rear cylinder at top dead center does not mean that you're ready to adjust the clearances or check the clearances on the front cylinder. The timing marks are different for the two. So if you set your clearances when they're not at the appropriate marks or positions, you're going to have problems. But anyway, when you start to remove the cylinder head cover, 5mm Allen bolts on top, there's a number of them. You'll see a little sheet that I have to keep them all in order. But the bolts will come out, the covers can come off, and then you've got 2 locating dowels and metal gaskets that come with the covers. And then regarding timing, there's 3 indications that you're where you need to be. So you can watch the valves open and close, just like any other 4-stroke process. And that's how you'll know you're on the compression stroke. You can also send a skinny tool or small screwdriver down the spark plug hole, and the piston will push it up to its highest point when you're at the top of the stroke in the cylinder. You can verify through the timing mark on the left side of the bike as you turn the engine over, which is described in the manual. And you can verify the alignment marks on the right side of the bike, which is also in the manual and is also pictured here to help you understand or at least verify where the marks should be and what it looks like in real life versus the manual. But the pictures in the manual are pretty accurate in this case. All right, thanks for taking the time to check into my video here. Hopefully this was helpful to you, but in this case we're doing a 2012 XV1700 Yamaha, and we're looking at the valve clearances, and we're actually going to end up adjusting them as well. But I would imagine this is going to be similar through the 16 and the 1700 line of XVs regarding the valve clearances. Honestly, the most challenging part is getting them exposed to where you can inspect the clearances. But once you get there, as long as you're verifying all the correct information, you shouldn't really have any problems. But you don't need a whole lot of tools. You don't really need any specialty tools either. The most unique tool for this job that I would say you would need is the square nut adjustment tool. So there's a Motion Pro part number in one of these screenshots that will help you acquire a set. You can do it with a small adjustable wrench as well. But other than that, you're just looking at 3/8 drive ratchet, torque wrench, some pliers for the hoses, and their clips, spring tension clips. I would say 4, 5, and 6mm Allens for the body work and the other fasteners that you have to take off on the side covers and on the valve covers. 10mm wrench. Of course, you're going to need your feeler gauges to inspect the valve clearances. and obviously the typical rags and towels and things of that nature to keep everything clean. The tap head adjusting tool set by Motion Pro that I have is 08-0073, and it's included every size that I need to perform this work on many motorcycles. But anyway, here's a shot of what it looks like once you get the valve cover off, and then I have an image of the documentation in the manual that helps you validate you're at top dead center on the front or the rear cylinder. So this is probably the most important page to reference in the manual when you're performing this work. When I say this work, I mean a valve clearance inspection and or adjustment, because you do have to be at top dead center and it needs to be right when you do this. Otherwise, you're probably not going to get the clearances right, and you don't want to do that. But anyway, we'll get right into it. I don't really show the assembly and disassembly of getting there. I show the more hidden information of what it should look like when you're at top dead center, where the marks are, per the manual, and what it actually looks like with the valve cover off. You can Google your own research or whatever for removing the seat and the tank. I'm sure you can find that, whereas this you may not find online. But anyway, this is a cardboard box cutout that I always do to make sure I keep my fasteners accounted for when I'm working on things of this nature. Here's just a quick overview of removing the plugs and get everything out of your way before you go to lift the valve covers off, which the rear you got to be patient with. The rear valve cover is a little tight getting on and off. And then don't forget these two vent lines here. They need to be disconnected. Just keep everything up on the frame and out of your way. Here's the timing mark for cylinder 1, which is the rear cylinder. You can see the T after the mark. Make sure you turn it from the left side of the bike counterclockwise. Turn the engine over, that is. And then I'm going to show this image from the manual multiple times during this video. It is very important that you remove this cover on the right side of the bike via these 6 Allen bolts and check the marks with the manual to ensure that you are at top dead center. It's very, very important to do that. And here you can see for the front cylinder, the timing marks are not aligned. They're offset, as you'll see in the bottom image of the manual, or the bottom picture of the manual page that I have on here multiple times. And then the line for the front cylinder on the timing does not have a T after it. But here you go, valve covers are off. Here's a 0.04 millimeter feeler gauge that will obviously not fit. Those valve clearances are too tight in this case. And in order to adjust them, we're going to use the Motion Pro tool and a 10 millimeter combination wrench. The 10 millimeter nut is the lock nut. So you're going to loosen the lock nut in order to use the square tool on the adjustment. And the adjustment is what changes your valve clearance. So you're slowly and gradually turning the square nut to ensure you have the appropriate amount of clearance with in this case, a 0.04 millimeter feeler gauge. And that's what I'm doing right now. So here you can see same feeler gauge. It's going through and lightly dragging, ensuring that you have the appropriate amount of valve clearance. And then this comes with like a metal gasket instead of a paper gasket, which is, in my opinion, a lot better, higher quality. It doesn't break when you try to remove it from the head. Just wiping off his valve covers here. And then, just like disassembly, be patient here in removing and installing the cylinder head covers. It is a pretty tight fit. It does help if you have a second hand or set of hands helping you. And then, of course, don't forget to put the gasket on and the locating dowels. There's 2 on each cylinder head cover that need to be in position. And then from there, you just tightening the Allen bolts. You know, if you use the cardboard box trick that I did, you won't have any trouble putting them back in the right spot, and then torquing them down to spec, of course. But, you know, assembly is just going to be the reverse of removal. Make sure you have a list and you don't forget any hoses to be reconnected. Obviously, your spark plugs and their leads, or their boots, I should say. And make sure you know your torque specs when you put everything back together, and you should be absolutely fine.